Hello team, welcome back to the Process podcast. I just wrapped up an awesome episode with my good friend Chris where we talked about the hybrid athlete, a term that's being thrown around a lot in 2024, 2025. So we started by defining what we thought a hybrid athlete was, and then we actually used Chris as a case study and we talked about how we would prepare him for a hybrid challenge. Hope you guys enjoy.
Welcome back to the guest chair, Ed.
Thank you, Chris. This chair is the same chair as when I'm the host.
Oh, so would you say it's a hybrid chair?
Oh, nice. Yeah, let's call it a hybrid chair. On that note,
I'm actually really impressed by my ability to be witty at that exact moment, because usually when I have a mic in front of me, I'm not very, but there's the exception or the rule. I'm not sure. Number two. Anyway, we're going into the idea of the hybrid athlete. And we want to talk about this because that term is so hot right now. And if I were to put a year of, it seems like we've come into the year of the hybrid athlete, whether it's HYROX or people who are trying to do extremely different physical feats within a short window of time. What is your take on that? Like, I don't know, that aspect of fitness at the moment?
I think as someone who has spent a lot of time in CrossFit, it doesn't seem very revolutionary or different. If anything, actually, it seems like a watered down version of what a lot of CrossFitters are doing.
Yeah.
Right? I think maybe like starting with the definition of what a hybrid athlete actually is. And maybe that's actually something that's up for debate.
Yep.
Because you just told me about 5 minutes ago, Ed, we're going to talk about the definition of hybrid. And I just rattled through my brain for a quick second. I was like, oh, I don't even know if I have a definition. But what I'd probably say defines a hybrid athlete is someone who has is multidisciplined and is able to express a high level of capacity in different areas, specifically strength and endurance.
Okay, so can we break that down a little bit? You said multifaceted, right?
Yeah, versatile.
So can you in real terms, what does that look like? Yeah.
So I think what most of the hybrid crowd are doing strength training. Now, strength training can be like powerlifting style training. I think it's less Olympic lifting based, and it's more like traditional strength training. So squats, bench, deads, and then probably bodybuilding style training. I would say that is what falls under the strength component of what a hybrid athlete is. And then on the endurance side, it can be anything from Ironmans, half Ironmans, triathlons, running based events, or even something like a HYROX, which is like a run biased endurance event. Okay. So I'm not talking about things like the hybrid athlete for me. I think in the 2024, 2025 definition isn't talking about muscle ups, handstand walks, high skill gymnastics, Olympic weightlifting. I think that still really falls under the CrossFit category. And the endurance side of things isn't necessarily like AMRAPs, rounds for time, 21:59. It's more like the classical, more endurance.
Okay, so what I'm hearing when you're saying this is, it sounds like,
this is just my definition. I don't know how.
Yeah, just to clarify, it sounds like when you're defining it, the tests that you're selecting are pure tests in the sense of the level, the barrier here. There's no skill barrier in that sense. Like you can have a really, have a really strong person who can't do one single muscle up because of the level of skill involved. Yes. But everyone can figure out how to deadlift or bench press or squat, relatively speaking.
Yeah, I wouldn't say everyone. So I still say it's barriers to entry. I mean, even like running, if I was going to be a purist, would say that, running is still not a sport for everyone. I think everyone thinks it's a thing for everyone. I still think there are important prerequisites that people should meet before they start going on running endeavors. So maybe that's the difference. I think, running for health is and running for performance, two different things. Sure. I don't think it's necessary for everyone, but yes, you're right. Compared to the CrossFit crowd, which is, I think, traditionally before the whole hybrid movement has come around, that would be your hybrid athlete. Okay. But I think the hybrid athlete now has separated from CrossFit. So you got CrossFitters, then you got the hybrid athlete, and a hybrid athlete is doing more simple variations of endurance and strength training, resistance training.
Okay. So
would you agree? What do you think?
I'll get to it.
Okay.
Because I have part of what we're doing as an exercise to open this is when I thought about the whole idea of a hybrid athlete, the definition and example of it, I had a feeling that there is no consensus and that, you ask 10 different people, you'll get 10 different answers. Yeah. And that seems, what I get here in front of me on these pieces of paper where I ask people to provide that to me from our team, it seems to correlate in that way. So the second question was a perfect example of that. So what is your perfect example of a hybrid athlete?
My perfect example of I think, okay, then the only thing I can really talk about here is like performance metrics. I think your hybrid athlete, perfect example. I think honestly, someone who's partaking in official competitions, endurance-based competitions, and maybe to balance out like strength-based competitions as well. So maybe the perfect hybrid athlete, or a great illustration of a hybrid athlete, is someone who is paid. Their livelihood is based upon them earning money through sponsorship and prize money.
That defines the athlete portion.
I think so. Yeah. I'm wrestling with that still a little bit. And they are partaking in endurance-based events, and they're partaking in strength-based events.
Do you have an actual person in mind when you say this?
A lot of the HYROX crowd. I think the top guys who are competing in the elite races. They are doing a lot of other more endurance-based events outside of it, but I wouldn't say that they're doing the strength type events. So yeah, I would say a lot of the elite HYROX crowd would fall under the hybrid category, but I would say they're more endurance-based. But I also think that's because
that's the demand of that sport.
If you're calling yourself an athlete, which means that your livelihood depends on it. Because there aren't that many pure hybrid competitions, right? An event which is testing, okay, day one, you test squat, bench, dead, for example, and day two, you run a marathon. You know, those two events are two separate events run by different organizations. So if you want to be someone who actually does well, who's in a position to win prize money, it wouldn't make sense trying to be really good at both. You would probably pick one. Right? So I guess maybe then going back to the perfect hybrid athlete, I think maybe then I got to think, well, what are the most hybridy type sports out there right now that people can partake in? And I would say that HYROX isn't really what I would deem to be like the hybrid athlete, because I don't think there's enough of an emphasis on the strength side of things. The functional stations between the runs, really, like, strength is not a massive limiter for what determines whether someone really excels. I'd still say it's more of a capacity test. I know there are lots of other iterations of HYROX now that have come out. You know, I think there's quite a few in the UK where, you know, you have to establish, like, I think there's like a 1 rep max pull up, 1 rep max shoulders overhead. It's one of the stations, maybe a 1 rep max front squat, and then there it's like a HYROX style race. I can't remember the name of it.
I know Under Armour were doing this at some point in Asia, and I think maybe in Europe as well.
Combine stuff? No.
Kind of, where they were doing, but then there was also high school things there too. So maybe that doesn't cleanly fall into the category.
So maybe I think what I'm seeing then, now I'm thinking about it more, is there's the hybrid recreational athlete, let's say, people, you know, who's, it's not their livelihood, but they're just enjoying the training, which is a blend of like endurance-based work and resistance training. But in terms of a pure test or a sport that's really testing both ends of the spectrum, I still think CrossFit is the closest thing that we have out there. And that's, you know, definitely not for everyone. What do you think?
Well, I will get into what I think, because I wrote my thoughts down as well. But
please.
In terms of the variability, again, the two questions are define a hybrid athlete, and you're not allowed to Google when you're making the definition, and just name, without Googling as well, your perfect example of a hybrid athlete. So of our process programming staff, Coach Meg said, someone who trains endurance and strength, but has no focus on skill-based movements. An example of this is Rob Hartley. Do you know who Rob Hartley is?
Do not. And does it, and competed with him at the
Gov Games.
Yes.
And I mean, the first thing you see on his Instagram profile is that he's a hybrid athlete, and he has a company called Club Hybrid for hybrid athletes. And to give you an example of his own endeavors in this, in a 10-hour window, he performed a 200 kilogram back squat. he performed 100 unbroken push-ups, and he finished a 100-kilometer ultra marathon, all within the space of 10 hours or less.
He finished 100K in sub 10 hours? No way.
All of that.
Wow.
Everything there.
That's a very impressive 100K time.
Yeah.
Damn. It's impressive.
So he didn't really
I like that though. I like that he has gone, he's, you know, from the resistance training side of things, he's gone with like a 1 rep max, a test of absolute strength. Then the 100 push-ups is a test of relative strength endurance because it's your body weight. I like that. And then he's gone like real opposite end of the spectrum with like 100K. That's cool.
Yeah, opposite and extreme.
Yeah, extremes. Yeah.
Another example would be this is from, I believe, this is from Skulk, someone who trains or has trained in multiple fitness modalities and is successful in both at the same time. An example of this is Ross Edgley.
Yeah.
So you know Ross Edgley.
Yeah.
And I did not, so I Googled a bit, and he is an ultra marathon swimmer, and he is freaking jacked.
He's tiny though.
Okay. He's
short.
I see him in
stacked,
pictures and I can't believe the dude can actually swim because there's so much muscle on that frame.
But he was an elite swimmer.
Okay.
That was actually his sport.
And he wasn't jacked at that time?
He was still jacked.
Holy shit.
And he's older than us.
What?
Yeah, that's what's crazy. I think Ross Edgley, let's have a look at his age. 39.
Okay. He is my
Your
age.
Yeah. Crazy.
And then Ant also used Ross Edgley as an example, but as to his definition, a hybrid athlete is someone that can excel in multiple facets of fitness in their current training split, assuming that, you know, whatever they're doing right now is perfect for these different things, including running, lifting, specific sports, etc.
Yep.
Now, in terms of me chiming in with my own definition, I have one because I have a childhood hero in sports that is a perfect example, I think, of a hybrid athlete. A person who has reached the top level of more than one organized sport. When I say organized sport, it's professional. It is a place where the best in the world. Yes, Bo Jackson. You know me well.
Legend. Because
he is the only athlete, I don't know, American athlete or athlete overall, to be an all-star in two sports, the NFL and the MLB. Yeah. So like if you think, well, Michael Jordan is a hybrid athlete because he played professional baseball. He played minor leagues and he never played, I don't think he ever suited up for the White Sox. He just played for their farm team. But Bo Jackson, he played for the Oakland Raiders, LA Raiders at the time, and the Kansas City Royals. And he has a highlight reel in both sports that would make anyone confused as to how he was able to do this.
Yeah. So your definition, you've gone less down the fitness route, and you've gone more down like the team sport route.
Yeah, it's just like you're so talented, but it's like your talents don't interfere with one another. Yeah. I guess there's carryover too. Like if you're an excellent runner, then you have great fast twitch muscle fibers that'll help you to run as well as throw a ball. But all athletes have great fast twitch muscle fibers in organized sport like that. But there's so few that can excel in these different sports. I played
organized sport and I didn't have fast twitch muscle fibers.
Well, just an example.
So something that I think about is, have you heard of it's called The Ultimate Hybrid Athlete? It's by a book by Alex Viada.
No.
And it was one of I think I read it in probably 2012, 2013. I would want to say about then. So this is before I really got into CrossFit.
So this concept has been around.
Yeah, and he was basically the ultimate hybrid athlete. The whole book was about how to achieve peak athleticism in multiple disciplines. And so he was the first guy who was talking about concurrent training or blended training, right? Yeah. Basically how to balance strength training with conditioning. He was jacked out of his mind, but he was doing a lot of I think he was doing ironman and like the ultra stuff. Yeah. And so he was the first guy, at least I think it brought it to common literature in the strength training world, who was really talking about how to combine the two. And then kind of CrossFit just came in and just said, no real principles. We're just going to do all of it at once. And they ended up creating some really, really fit people. And I think when CrossFit came into it, I think it really kind of just threw out the whole idea of, okay, we don't need structure to make people really strong and really fit, because CrossFit's constantly varied approach seems to be doing that. But I still really agree with the principles of what Alex Viada was trying to put out there, which was, he was talking about, prioritizing one over the other based upon what type of athlete you were, what time of the season you were doing it. He talked about splitting your training to get, more potent adaptation in either all the things that we talk about all the time, with the individual coaching course and the way that we educate our athletes and the way that we try to even program within CrossFit. Sometimes different periods of the year we'll have sessions which are just focused on strength, being strong and fast and powerful, and then other sessions built around being long and enduring.
Okay.
So the concept has been out there for a long time, and his book was called, I'm just going to look. Yeah, his book was called The Ultimate Hybrid Athlete. Definition, a definitive guide to achieving peak athleticism across all disciplines. It's like on my like recommended reading list. And I know a lot of coaches who go on to that on my Instagram have like read the book and have commented and said they really, really enjoyed it.
How long ago was it published?
It was published in...
I'm just curious how old this concept has been.
Okay. This is a new one, June 2025.
It's a new edition.
Okay, so he's obviously knowing that this is a big movement now.
Yeah, right.
So he's
and the main point of this discussion is to talk about programming for a hybrid
2015.
athlete. 2015. So this concept has been around at least for the last 9 years. But it being that old, based on the age of this book, it only seems to have really gotten popular in the last couple of years. And one thing that you mentioned that I also thought was really interesting is it seems to have broken from CrossFit, right? Where I thought CrossFit was the perfect hybrid athlete because you're doing so many different things in strength and in endurance across the entire, strength continuum, whether it's single maximal contractions or, so many contractions in a short amount of time, and you're talking about the endurance of your muscles and your aerobic and anaerobic fitness, all these different things, right? Like the energy systems and everything. But for some reason, it broke into CrossFit and hybrid athlete are two things. For me, historically, the first time I ever thought of it was Adam Klink, who I think works for Rad now. But what he achieved one time the last few years ago was a sub 5 minute mile, as well as a 500-pound back squat, and I think 50 pull-ups, all in the same day.
That became like I think he kind of threw down the gauntlet.
Yeah.
Loads of CrossFitters were trying to basically match that.
Right. So, I mean, what happened there? Like, why is it so popular now, and how did it diverge away from CrossFit?
I think the things that I think have contributed to this movement is twofold. I think there's been a rise in functional fitness-based events like Turf Games and HYROX, specifically the two ones that jump to mind, right? Which are basically, there's skill elements, there's strength elements, and there's an endurance element. But without all the high complex, without all the extreme range of motion that's required for CrossFit. So basically it instantly made it a lot more accessible to a much, much bigger market. Versus CrossFit, there's prerequisites to be able to do CrossFit. Number one, like gyms are quite expensive to be a part of. Number two, most gyms, well, actually, no, some gyms have assessment protocols that you need to be able to meet to be able to join, which is what we have at Coastal. And then, it's a big commitment, CrossFit. Like you need a gym, you need quite a bit of equipment to do it. It's very technical. So unless you really commit to the methodology, it's hard to make progress in the long run. So the moment you create a fitness-based event that speaks to a bigger audience, you got a greater chance to get more buy-in and more participation. And then the unfortunate other side of the coin that I think has contributed is just the reducing popularity in CrossFit. I think especially in the last few years, I really think, the pandemic kicked it all off with a lot of CrossFit gyms closing, people leaning into other disciplines during that time. People didn't have gyms. People started running. People started doing home-based styles of workouts. Then the whole Greg Glassman thing happened during the pandemic. that turned a lot of people off. A lot of CrossFit affiliates started unaffiliating that period of time. Then we had change in ownership. Then we had the Lazar Jukic thing. There's just so many things that have all been just non-stop happening. And I just saw something the other day, which assessed the number of signups to the CrossFit Open in the first 24 hours. I don't know if you saw that, but it's been on a decline.
Low, yeah.
But it's gone from 24,000 in the first 24 hours last year to 8,000 this year. Now, not to say that number could bump up, but it's probably quite indicative that the interest in not necessarily CrossFit, but especially signing up for a CrossFit competition is on the decline.
Right.
But you've got all this whole pool of competitive people who still like pushing themselves. Where are they going to go? And HYROX, on the contrary, is doubling the amount of events that they're putting out every single year.
They're selling out all the time in a matter of hours.
Yeah, and they're entering new cities all the time. And so, you got a big part of the CrossFit crowd, the traditional hybrid athlete, who are now transitioning into that because, number one, they've lost interest with CrossFit a little bit and they want to try something new, or they just they're angry, pissed off, whatever with the organization, and therefore don't want to support it. I also do think the burnt out CrossFitter is a pretty big market. Marcus Phillies had a huge impact in the world, marketing to that exact demographic. The people who no longer want to do the really high intensity stuff. They no longer want to, put their body through bigger ranges of motion because, as we get older, we get a little bit less resilient. People get less time to train, and therefore, keeping up very complex training, like a lot of training programs are for CrossFit, is harder and harder to do. So you got these three big contributing factors that I think have meant people moving away from CrossFit. And then you got this rise of people who maybe in the past were just runners or yogis or gym rats who just enjoy bodybuilding, who are now finding they have an ability to take part in this cool fitness event, connect with this community of fellow HYROXers or turf gamers or whatever. And, they're feeling a sense of belonging now. The gyms are all evolving. The commercial gyms are all evolving to have a home for hybrid athletes. Every gym has prowlers, sleds, pull-up rigs. They've got running spaces. They've got, cool treadmills, rowers, skiers. They're catering to the fitness, that market. They've got strongman equipment as well. So I think there's lots of things that have happened in a really short amount of time that have just led to the rise of popularity in the sport. I think running in the pandemic was, suddenly became, running and biking actually became two of the most participated types of exercise worldwide. And then I think you got all these runners who really maybe found a love for running and being outdoors and connected with nature, who were like, how can I make this a part of my thing, like my sport or my activity? So I haven't thought about this, but just like thinking out loud, there's just so many things that have contributed to, I think, why this has become so popular. I wanted to quickly interrupt this episode with a quick shout out to our sponsors, Today Well Spent. I've been using this journal for 2 years and it has made a massive impact on my physical, but mostly my mental well-being. It is a guided journal backed by neuro and behavioral science, which I actually didn't know at the time. It has questions for you to answer at the start of the day, at the end of the day, end of every week, end of every month. And it's brought so much self-awareness to me of the things that positively and negatively impact my life. So if you're someone who cares about your physical and your mental well-being, which I think you do because you listen to this podcast, then go and grab yourself a Today Well Spent. Use the discount code THEPROCESS, one word in capitals, to get your discount.
So, I mean, and like I said, the main part of this discussion is to kind of how do we theoretically program for someone who wants to be a quote unquote hybrid athlete? And before this discussion was happening, I was thinking, let's create a case study of an avatar client. Because for the ICC, what we usually do is we make up a person and we make up, their client profile, who they are, what they do professionally, what their goals are, what their current state of fitness and health and everything in their life is. That way you can map out how to program for this person. Actually, everything that you said 100% lines up with where I am right now in my athletic endeavor. So let's make me the avatar.
Nice.
Because then I can figure out my ear.
Yeah.
So let's kill two birds with one stone here. The reason why I am the perfect avatar for you right now is because it's not that I don't like CrossFit anymore, but for a few reasons. Number one, like the fallout from Lazar Jukic's death and how CrossFit HQ handled that, like that weighed heavily on me in terms of like where my values stand. But also like I'm not as, I don't recover well as I used to. I get banged up a lot more, and like I can't walk away from hard efforts, and I'm picking up small injuries here and there. And before I did CrossFit, I was heavily into triathlon training. So I was outside a lot, and then I got really bored with that. And then strength training in the gym became really exciting. Now it's kind of flipped on this other side where it's like, I had started doing recovery runs, and I really got into that, being outside and being able to process my thoughts and kind of do this thing that's also good exercise, but it's also really good for my head and my heart. And now I'm starting to fall back in love with the process of learning how to run again, and being able to put on miles and be good at it. Cause now I want to take a more structured approach. Whereas when I was younger, I just did it. Right. I didn't know.
You just reminded me of, I think, another contributing factor as to why hybrid has become so popular,
which is,
I think people like Peter Attia, you know, who are putting out great content. They've got, you know, books, they've got YouTube channels, they've got podcasts, and a lot of their work is all around this idea of longevity, right? How do we get humans living longer and functioning for longer? And they are, you know, a big central piece of longevity is VO2 max. Everyone's talking about it, right? And, you know, it's now widely regarded from the scientific field as the biggest predictor for longevity. The
over endurance and strength.
Yeah, well, I guess a VO2 max is really testing it's stating, you know, what one aerobic capacity exactly is. So they're saying, that there is a lot of positive links between high levels of VO2 max, longer health span, living for longer, reduction in all-cause mortality. And they've done studies over 50, 60 years now with thousands of people. You know, you've got people enrolled in these studies who are dying off during the study, and it's the science and research is really compelling. So, you know, these guys are now saying how important it is that you need to be doing energy system training. You need to go do metabolic conditioning. You got to be going short and fast. You got to hit the medium lactate threshold stuff, and you got to be doing the long zone 2 work. That's how you're going to build really good levels of VO2 max. But they're also saying how important resistance training is, right? You know, for bone density and being able to break your fall and being able to, you know, look after yourself in later life. So
just like to preserve your independence as a human.
The fact that you got the scientific crowd now also agreeing that strength training and endurance training are really, really important for longevity. It's not just an aesthetic thing anymore, right? In the past, strength training, the scientists would just say it's an aesthetic thing that you don't need to worry about. You know, endurance training is like, you know, do a bit of zone 2 work and, you know, maintain good levels of heart health, because the tests were never rigorous enough to know just how complete someone's cardiorespiratory capacity was.
And that's maybe the other part of this is I still love doing CrossFit workouts, and I love the skill of it and being able to improve on something like a ring muscle up. I had a quick conversation with Ant about that, you know, over the weekend, of how I can improve that. I love that part of it. At the same time, using CrossFit as a test of my fitness, it's a little all over the place, because sometimes my limiters are not in my pure capacity. Sometimes like my technique is off, or sometimes I didn't properly warm up. Whereas if I just select 2 goals, that would be a hybrid thing. I feel like that for me would set a really nice, clear idea of how my training should look, and also how I do against that definition. So if we're talking about me as a case study, for example, in this year, because I'm doing it right now, my goal is to run twice a week, right, for the rest of the year. And I don't have a goal, but let's say theoretically I want to finish a marathon in 2025. Also, I'm in the middle of the 12-week back squat cycle with the process that you wrote. And let's say I want to squat 170 kg. Right now, my back squat max is 161. So if I make these my 2 goals for 2025, and it doesn't need to be the same day, it doesn't need to be that kind of extreme, but I want to achieve these 2 things. First of all, does that satisfy your definition of a hybrid athlete training style?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, so
I think 2 opposite ends of the spectrum, yeah.
Okay, so let's get into it right now. Like, okay, what is the first step that we need to do for programming for a client and knowing how to do that per our process?
Nice. Okay, so first thing we need to establish is we need some timelines. Right, so we need some timelines, but part of the conversation of timelines is, where are you currently at relative to where you want to get to? Because that's going to help establish our timelines. So sometimes clients come in, they just say, I want to do a marathon on this date. You know, and it's in 3 months time. And you say, how much running are you doing right now? None. How much running have you done before this? Nothing.
Yep.
Okay, cool. Now that doesn't mean we can't finish a marathon. But if the goal is simply just to finish, then I think we can achieve that.
Yeah.
However, if the goal is to break 3 hours,
Yeah.
maybe we need to manage those expectations more realistically. So firing this back to you now. So do you have timelines associated with these two things?
Not at the current moment, but as long as I can finish a marathon by the end of the year.
Okay, so technically then, if
December.
we're currently in January, we've got at least, at the most, you've got 11 months to complete the marathon. Fantastic. Now, do you have a specific goal that you want to achieve with this marathon, or is it just being able to finish the marathon?
It's to be able to finish without walking.
Okay, cool.
So basically a constant run.
Doesn't matter how slow the run is, right? Is that right? It doesn't matter how slow you're running.
As long as I am running.
Okay, let me ask you this question now. Could you achieve that tomorrow?
I don't think so.
Why?
I don't think my muscles could my joints could support that. Like right now I'm only doing 45 minutes to an hour at a time. So if you ask me to do that, let's assume budget 3 hours, right?
Yeah.
I've never run 3 hours in my life. I've done a half marathon and that took, I don't remember, but I've never done anything longer than a half marathon.
Okay. So then we know that right now the limiter for you achieving that goal is actually just time on feet, right? It's like, it's not actually, probably not so much a fitness limiter, but it's more the fact that like, if you do that tomorrow, you're probably gonna get some savage blisters after 20 kilometers. Yeah. Your ankles are gonna be hurting, your knees and hips are all gonna be a mess.
Yeah.
And therefore that's probably gonna be the thing that's gonna force you to walk. Okay, cool. So with your example, given you got 11 months to get there, I think what I would probably do is like, okay, I would like to try and narrow that down a little bit more, because it would, here's the thing. If you said, okay, let's change this, the goal remains the same, finish a marathon without walking, but I want to be able to do it in 3 months versus same goal, but I want to do it in 11 months. Okay. Cause that's going to really dictate the cadence of how much we need to be pushing you to get to that goal. Right. So if we got 11 months, then we could probably reduce your running to once a week and slowly build up over 11 months the ability for you to run a marathon and do it well. However, if your goal is in 3 months, I don't think once a week is going to be enough potentially to get you. I think it's still going to be enough. Okay, let's change that. Let's
how about this? How about this? What if it is twice? I do still want to maintain twice a week. Okay. Then how soon can I do a marathon given what you know?
Okay, cool. So that's a tough question because everyone responds differently. But let's say, if I'm just going to make an estimated guess, knowing that you had an endurance background, right? So there's a mental aspect that I know that you're going to be comfortable with. Like, you know how to suffer. You're right to be in your own head for 3+ hours. Like, that's not going to be a problem. You've also got, some metabolic memory where your body has been through things like this. You've also done CrossFit and put yourself through some really hard workouts. So there's a mental resilience that I'm confident you're going to be able to handle. Yeah. And it's important I'm aware of that, because there's a lot of people who mentally break down way before their body physically breaks down. So I don't think that's going to be a limiter with you. So I think given the fact that you're already running twice a week, you're already doing 1 hour runs. You've done, when was your last half marathon?
2017.
Okay, so I'm not even going to really factor that in to be like a physical contributor to what your fitness is right now. But if you're running 1 hour right now, then we need to get you to the point of running triple that. Yeah. At least 3 hours, maybe even longer. I'm confident we could get you there in 3 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's put a pin on that for a second. Okay. How about the back squat part? Now, this one does have a hard timeline because I'm in week 3 of a 12-week cycle. So I have 9 weeks to get to 170 kilos.
Okay. So your goal is to squat 170, basically a 9 kg PR in 7 weeks.
No, in 9 weeks.
In 9 weeks. That's your goal. So basically at the end of this squat cycle is when you're going to hit your PR. Yeah. Okay, cool. Okay, well then we got a unique situation, which is probably good for us in the sense that if we're saying we've got 3 months to prepare you for your marathon, which is 15 weeks, but you're only 9 of those weeks is going to be focused on your back squat 1 rep max. Yeah, then that's going to give us an additional 6 weeks to then potentially say we don't care about the back squat anymore. We're going to up the ante in our marathon training.
I see.
Make sense?
So we're gonna prioritize back squat.
Yeah. So this is in your instance, right? Yeah. As a coach, I'm like, that's good.
Yeah.
So that basically means I'm going to target to really ramp up training volume for your marathon after the 9-week mark.
Okay.
So basically, that means for the first 9 weeks, we're going to do more of an even blend of back squat strength work, and like probably like lower intensity, more zone 2, zone 3 based volume on the legs, because I don't want. Because both of these goals are important to you, but I know that if we did a little bit every week, twice a week, but then at the 9-week mark, when you finish your back squat test and hopefully PR, I can then say, all right, now running becomes a priority. You got 6 weeks. Assume that you're going to start tapering 2 weeks before or 3 weeks before the marathon. That means I got 3 to 4 weeks to really ramp up your volume to hopefully get you, to, hopefully the peak week would be getting you to a 33, 36 kilometer run. And because, basically to run a marathon, you got to run 42K, right?
42, 195.
Yeah. If I can get you to 33, 35 in your biggest run, maybe 3 to 4 weeks before the marathon, then I know you're going to be good. I know you can mentally grit through that last 5, 6K and finish it.
Yeah. But I guess the part where it really makes it the hybrid part is, how do you help me improve my squat without taking away from my ability to run? How do you improve my miles on the run without making my legs too tired to squat?
Yeah.
How does that part work?
So, okay, good. So let's basically, I think it was good for us to outline that example. But let's say, for example, this athlete wanted to PR their back squat and do the marathon the same day.
Yeah.
Which basically meant you're not going to have time periods where you can prioritize the other.
Let's assume that.
Let's
assume I buy fully into the hybrid athlete and I'm like, I want to fucking do this.
Do both in one day. Okay, love it. So many things we have to consider here. One of my questions is going to be, how important is everything else that doesn't fall into those two buckets? So everything that's not back squatting or everything that's not marathon running, how important are those things? So for example, are you doing upper body training? Like, do you care how your upper body functions? Like, are you totally fine abandoning all upper body strength? Are you totally fine, potentially losing a bit of muscle mass on your upper body? Are you totally fine gaining 10 kilograms of weight, which is going to potentially help you to back squat 170 kg? But the goal is just to run a marathon. Like, I'm confident in 3 months.
I see.
If you were 10 kg heavy, I could still get you to run a marathon. Yeah. If we trained you.
I will say, per the definition of a hybrid athlete, don't take away everything.
Okay.
Right.
Cool.
At least maintenance.
Okay. So then, that's my question is, okay, if it's maintenance, well, then the first question I need to establish is, well, what are you doing right now? Are you currently in maintenance mode? Which basically means roughly the volume you're doing right now is roughly the volume you need to maintain.
For everything that's not back squat and running?
Yeah.
I would say so, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So therefore, what we need to do is actually have a look at what your week currently looks like and say, okay, well, if we want to maintain everything else, like your upper body strength, etc., then we need to make sure we're not reducing that. Now, caveat, as a coach, I would need to explain to you and say, Chris, I need you to understand that the fact that you also want to maintain things like your upper body strength and your level of muscle mass, I think I need you to understand that this might affect how much we can gain on your back squat.
Sure.
Because that basically means, we've only got, how many days a week are you training?
I guess 6.
Okay, we got 6 training opportunities in a week. Now, because you want to maintain upper body strength and mass, that means some of those 6 training opportunities are going to have to go towards non-squatting and non-marathon related activities.
Right.
You need to understand that if there's 2 Chris's, one Chris says, I'll go all in on squatting and marathon training. Yeah. And one Chris says, I'm not willing to go all in because I want to do this other stuff. Yeah. I would say that Chris number 1 wins. Okay. Chris number 1 is going to get the bigger back squat and he's going to have the bigger marathon.
Yeah. And that may be that might be the rub here, is if you are a pure hybrid athlete and you have clear goals, like our dude who did the 200 kg back squat, the 100 push-ups and the 100-kilometer marathon run in under 10 hours. I can't imagine he had much else rather than contribute to those things specifically.
Yeah, we just don't know.
Right.
Because here's the thing, if he achieved all those goals and he made other improvements in other areas of fitness, he just didn't document it.
Yeah.
Well, then I could probably sit here and say, wow, he could have achieved even more than that
Okay.
had he gone even more. And this is basically the law of specificity, right? We always talk about it as coaches, is if you have a client who has very, very specific goals, then any training that is not related to that goal is ultimately going to impact how soon or just by like how great you achieve that goal. So it's an important conversation you got to have, right? So I now know as a coach, okay, Chris's 2 main goals are back squat 1 rep max, hit a PR of 9 kg and run a continuous marathon. But I also need to make sure that I'm monitoring his upper body strength. And I need to make sure that we're probably, what about aesthetics? Like, is that important to you? Do you want to be, what's your body weight right now?
73 with like 12% body fat.
Okay. How do you feel about that? Like, what's your buffer? Are you willing to go up or down either way?
I actually don't give a shit either way. Yeah.
So if we got you to back squat 170 kg at 65 kilograms of body weight,
that'd be insane if I was 65 kilograms.
Would you be happy with that?
Yeah. And I also would wonder how I'd look at 65 kg. That's
is that a problem?
I don't think so. Just I wonder if that's too light for me even.
Don't know. You're the boss?
Yeah. I mean, why did you pick that number, I guess?
Well, I guess it's sometimes clients will say that they're comfortable in doing anything to achieve a goal.
I see.
But when you really dig into it, you start to realize that there's a lot of things they're not comfortable with.
Okay, is this you kind of fishing for what
this
I'm
is me
with?
basically really understanding, okay, what have I got to work with here?
I see.
So how do you feel about?
I think what it really comes down to is if you said, Chris, you need to drop 8 kg to achieve your goal. In my head, I'm like, I have so many things outside of the gym that I need to be in charge of that dropping 8 kg is going to probably interfere with my ability to work, be a good father and husband, yada, yada, yada. So those would be some limiters that I can't negotiate out.
I think an important thing that I should probably add in here is that if I look at your 2 goals, 9 kg back squat PR and run a marathon continuously, I would say the harder goal out of those 2 is the 9 kg squat PR.
Because
you've been back squatting for a really long time and like a 9 kg PR is pretty damn big, right? So if we're talking your current PR is 161, right? So we're talking like a 7% PR, a 7% increase in load to hit a PR. That's pretty substantial. Normally we're talking like 1 to 3% for someone who has a training age as high as you do. 1 to 3% increase is pretty damn good. So if we're asking for like a 7% increase, I would say that's going to be a harder goal for you to achieve than it is running a full marathon.
Okay, so coaches head on. When you see that laid out, the math, right, where the percentages, the viability of the goal seems to be maybe not out of reach, but hard to come by. Do you have a conversation with your athlete of, hey, should you want to rethink this, or like, why are you choosing this number? What is that conversation?
I think it's really important to give some realistic guidelines and deadlines. To say like, hey, I think you really need to. I would like to explain what I think it's going to take for you to achieve this goal, and if you think that what is required to achieve it is not worth it to you, then maybe we need to reassess your guidelines. So going back to the weight thing, which is why I'm using you as an example here, is because I think it's much harder for you to PR by 9 kg than it is to run a marathon. I would say that Chris would probably benefit from being a bit heavier. So if we gain 2 to 3 kilograms of mass, not necessarily totally lean muscle mass, but maybe even a bit of body fat, is 2 to 3 extra kilograms going to affect your ability to run a marathon? I'd say no. You're still on like the moderate end of like the weight for a marathon run. But will 2 to 3 kilograms of extra load help you to lift 9 kilograms more in a back squat? Absolutely yes. Right? Mass moves mass at the end of the day. It's going to help you recover as well. So that's a conversation I think I want to put to you now. Would you be willing to look at things like diet and nutrition and potentially gain 2 to 3 kilograms?
That one I can do. That
in the pursuit.
That mentally seems so much easier to attain.
Okay, cool. So I know that if we made that decision together, that's going to accelerate your ability to achieve both these goals, in my opinion, just given where you're at. So good for me to do that. So let's summarize now. What I have to work with is we've got 6 days of training in a week. We're going to be looking at lifestyle, nutrition, potentially gaining a bit of weight, which is going to accelerate your progress specifically on your back squat. We have to run twice a week. I think I'm not sure if I said that already.
Yep.
But we also have to make sure we're getting some upper body training in to make sure that we are meeting your goal of maintaining at the very least your upper body strength numbers and muscle mass.
Yep.
So question, how often are you doing upper body training right now?
Whatever we have on LPC,
Roughly, if you were to like 6 sessions.
So there's
So for example, if half a session is
Yeah.
upper body,
Yeah.
like you're doing a full body session,
Yeah.
then that counts as 0.5 of a session. So
I see.
out of 6 sessions a week,
Yeah.
how many upper body
I guess
sessions?
it really would be roughly 50% per session, and I have about 5 at least training days, so 2.5 days of upper body.
Okay, cool. So we need to make sure we're getting 2.5 days of upper body strength training in your week somehow. Now that could be maybe split into like 2 full upper body days, or it can be like 0.5.
Yeah. So
upper
this
body
is
days,
where we're
yeah.
creeping into the actual programming side of things.
Yeah.
What training split are you recommending at the moment?
I would say that the best thing for you, one thing that's really important to, I think we've already agreed on this. The harder out of these 2 goals for you, Chris, is going to be back squatting,
Right.
hitting a back squat PR.
Right.
Which means when I look at your week, I'm going to prioritize your back squatting over your marathon running.
Right.
Okay, so if I look at your training week, I think Sunday's your rest day right now.
Right? That's like my recovery run.
Okay, when is your full rest day?
I don't have one at the moment.
But you got 6 days. What you said you train 6 days a week.
I counted my Sunday hour recovery run because it's zone 2 as my rest day.
Okay, cool. So actually
that
training
count?
7 days a week.
Okay. Is that a problem?
How do you feel on 7 days a week right now?
Well, this morning I struggled with my squat.
What were you telling me about your sleep quality just this morning?
Terrible.
Okay, sleep quality is not great.
Not
How's
great
your
at the
energy
moment.
levels in general?
I feel like I'm always tired.
Okay, right, Chris. Life intervention. I think maybe training 7 days a week might not be the best solution for you right now.
Okay, good.
Okay, even if it's active recovery work, we still have to understand that even active recovery work still requires resources for your body to recover
Yeah,
from.
yeah.
Okay, so when people say like, "Oh, I've added active recovery to help me recover," it can make you feel better.
Yeah.
You know, it can help move substrates around,
Yeah.
it can reduce the levels of DOMs, but it doesn't make you recover more. At the end of the day, what makes you recover more is sleeping more and actually probably taking a rest day.
So that's making me think like, all right, Tuesday's our aerobic Tuesday day. So it's our energy systems day. I'd probably not do that and instead allocate the run from Thursday to that day.
Okay,
Right?
cool. And you give yourself a rest day. I think forget the avatar, Chris. I think you actually need to give yourself a rest day, buddy. Okay, so there's another layer to this.
What is
now.
rest?
There's another layer to this now because now you're saying, okay, Ed, a non-negotiable for me is training on a Tuesday by doing the prescribed aerobic Tuesday session. Is that true?
No. I'm saying I'm willing to
we're
drop
talking about real
that.
Chris. Okay, got it.
Yeah, I'm willing to drop that
Right.
in order for it to get my second run day.
Okay, so we got 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Now, assuming rest day, Sunday's rest day,
Yeah.
I'm going to make an assumption to say that Monday is probably going to be the day of your week where you feel physically best.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's what we call our critical day, right?
Okay.
When we say our critical day, that's the day where we want to make sure we're doing the most demanding work based upon the client's goals.
Right. So if my number one priority is squatting that
Yeah.
day.
So Monday, I'm going to make sure you start your session with like our heaviest back squat day. The most neurologically demanding back squat work
Okay.
is going to happen on Monday.
Okay.
And then after the squatting, I'll get you start your session with the squatting. Then I'll probably fill the rest of that session in with maybe some supplementary lower body work, like some hamstring work or some glute work and some upper body strength training. Okay, that's my Monday. So I'm going to be going full body resistance. Now, Tuesday, I'm going to ask myself, how's my athlete going to be feeling on Tuesday after doing a big squatting session on Monday? Well, your legs are probably going to be a little bit sore.
Yeah.
Neurologically, you might be a little bit tired and frazzled from like grinding through some heavy work.
Yeah.
Tuesday is going to have to be an easier day for me. Okay, so Tuesday is probably where I'm going to put some form of recovery run in. I'm going to make it a run, and it's definitely going to be more volume focused, lower in intensity. So this might be zone 2 work where we are, accumulating up to an hour or maybe even more, but I'm really going to make sure you keep it within zone 2 so that we're not, really pushing the body too hard. This session is really all about time on your feet. Okay. So we're going to build that volume over the week. So maybe week 1, we're starting with 30, 45 minutes, and maybe we set a target of getting up to a point of where we're doing a zone 2 run for an hour and a half, 2 hours. Right. So that will be progressed over the weeks. So then I got Wednesday as a potential training day. I think Wednesday I'm going to go back to doing some resistance training here. So my Wednesday legs are probably going to be a little bit cooked here.
Yeah.
You've done a big squat session on Monday.
Right.
You've done a potentially a 2-hour run on a Tuesday.
So Wednesday's a perfect upper body day.
Wednesday's going to be upper day.
Yeah.
And this is going to be like our main upper body day.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So that's upper body, maybe some supplementary work, maybe some core work, some biceps, triceps, etc. Okay, so then we got Thursday. Now we're not rest. Are you doing 6 days in a row? Yeah, you're doing 6 days in a row. Right?
Let's say Thursday would be, let's say Sunday's the actual rest day. So that Thursday
Okay.
would be another day to do something.
So then Thursday's another day to do something. Okay, so I think what I'd probably do here is I ideally would like you to be having a bit of like an active recovery day, but what we could potentially do is this could be your second leg day, right? Your legs had a full rest on Wednesday. I'd also make sure that Wednesday upper body day is not too hard. So if you're looking at the week, Monday's a hard day, Tuesday's an easy day, Wednesday is going to be an easy moderate day. So maybe we're doing more like hypertrophy style training. We're not going like heavy CNS work.
Chase the pump.
Not pushing to failure. Remember, we're not striving for adaptation with our upper body in this cycle. We're just maintaining. So, I might be making sure that you're leaving 3 repetitions in a tank with everything, so it's not beating you up.
Yeah.
And then on Thursday, that might be my next big, bigger lower body session, but it's not going to be as hard as Monday. So if Monday was a hard strength training session, this Thursday session is going to be like a moderate hard training session. Okay. So I'm still gonna get you to squat because that's one of your goals.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna be probably as heavy as a Monday sesh. Okay, so that leaves us with Friday. We got 2 days left in the week.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we have 2 options here. We could make Friday a bit of an easy day so that Saturday is the day where you feel freshest to hit a hard run.
Okay.
Or we go Friday, we do your hardest run. This is going to be more like tempo based running, maybe lactic threshold type work.
Yeah.
And then basically we call Saturday an easy day, which would then give you basically an easy day and a full rest day on your weekend, which I think would allow you to come in on Monday, feel fresher.
I see.
So I would say I'm going to give you the option here. Which of those 2 options do you think sounds best for you and your life priorities?
Probably when you lay it out like that so clearly, Friday seemed like the smartest option to do a hard run, because if I have a hard run Saturday, knowing that I'm going to be back to a heavy squat on Monday, knowing I only had 1 day in between, I don't think I can, at my age right now, I can recover from a hard Saturday and be 100% on Monday.
Great. Okay. This is perfect demonstration of collaboration with the client. Right?
Yeah.
So I got 2 options as a coach. Both could work, but I want to ask my client. I'm probably going to also ask family time, if you're going to do a hard run on a Saturday, that's potentially going to be 2 hours.
Yes, I was also thinking of my family when I answered that.
Yes. but for example,
that actually makes a lot of sense.
For example, I know that you have family goals, right? And you want to spend more time with your wife and your girls.
Yeah.
And therefore I'd say, well, if we just made Saturday a really easy session that you could maybe even do at home, you didn't have to get out to a gym.
Yeah.
Maybe it was more like mobility based work, maybe some like light body weight stuff. Just maintenance style work.
That makes sense.
You could just do that at home in 30, 40 minutes and then get the whole weekend with your family.
Yeah,
so, then we're tying in lifestyle stuff here.
Yeah.
I think would make a lot more sense. And then you get almost 2 full recovery days.
Yeah.
So you come back in on Monday and you can crush it all again.
Sweet. So that was awesome. Now, my question, to wrap this all up is you didn't know that you were going to write a program for me specifically. I said vaguely there would be a hybrid athlete avatar we'd make, but just on your feet right now, you just basically laid out your basic weekly template. Now, we can get into what the progression looks like, our different phases and everything like that. We've kind of gone over that in past episodes. We don't need to retread that. I guess my main question is, when you're doing that, how are you able to do that? Like, what's what's going on in your head for you to be able to cover the bases? Or is this a first iteration that you'll write down and then revisit later after you present to your client? Like, from a coach's perspective, how does one attain the ability to write programs effectively like that?
Yeah. I think for me, it's honestly just repetition and just a lot of practicing. I've been doing writing programs. I'm super interested in it. I really find it fascinating. Yeah. I love I would never say I'm a creative person, but I'd probably say the one creative aspect I have in my life is the program design aspect.
Yeah.
And I'm just really interested in it. So, when I look back at the last 16 years of being a coach, you know, every week of those 16 years, a very large portion of time has been sat down writing training programs or assessing people. So I think that's just like, you just can't replace the experience that, you know, you acquire through coaching people or writing group programs. So yeah, I always say that's just the biggest thing. I just had such a head start on it. And I mean, I talked about this on the podcast a lot, but before the 16 years, I was writing programs since I was 14 years old. And so really I'm 37 now. So that's 23 years of just writing programs every single week of my life and still loving it. Like, I don't know, I just find it fascinating.
The other part that I think was effective was you weren't in your own head about it, in the sense that like you were asking me questions. So there's feedback and collaboration.
Yeah.
It definitely needs to happen with the client, right?
Sure.
It can, and if you have the support, it can and should happen with your colleagues as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good point. I think the cool thing about writing programs is that we could have written 1,000 different programs there for your specific goal, and all probably would have been effective.
Sure.
And so it's tempting as a coach, you get asked a question presented with a client who's trying to achieve a goal. You probably immediately start thinking about, when have I done this before? What did I do with that last client? Maybe I'll just copy that same thing again because it worked.
Yeah.
The truth is every client is really unique, right? And the effectiveness of the program is being able to marry, a smart training program that really fits with the client. And so making it a collaborative process is so important.
Yeah.
So you ultimately provided me with most of the answers I needed there.
Yeah.
I was just, the only coaching know-how that I probably needed to know there was the fact that, okay, I want to try and split Chris's squatting and running days. That's going to allow me to get more of a potent adaptation from both. And I want to make sure I'm going kind of hard, easy, moderate days, not doing hard into hard days, because that's very hard to recover from. Other than that, like, what other pieces of coaching knowledge
it's cool.
I really implement? I didn't really...
and the cool thing in terms of being able to share it, at least with your client, is my buy-in now is like so high.
Yeah.
Because I know it's exactly tailored to me as an athlete and as a person.
And you said you had a choice in every decision that we made there.
Yeah.
Which basically means that, you had to think, okay, can I actually do that?
Right.
And then, I gave you some options and you picked the best option for you.
Yeah. And
therefore, you've had just as much a part in this creation process as I have. And like you said, you're going to get so much more buy-in and also know-how, in the way that we did that, I was always explaining to you why I would do it this way, why I recommend it. So when you're now following your program and you can see squatting on a Monday and you're easy run on a Tuesday, you know why. You understand,
right? Oh,
okay, this is meant to be an easier day. You understand the stimulus more, the intention can allow you to get so much more out of the training session as well. So I think, that collaboration process is so important. And, you can't write a training program really for an individual without doing that.
Cool. Wholeheartedly agree. Now, I guess just to end on like a fun note of sorts. I mean, number one, this was awesome. And if you are a coach and you wonder how to write a program, this conversation, like now, like me, as when I write a program for one of my clients, I'm going to think about, all right, I need to check in with them. I can't just kind of put it in a silo and be like, check it out. I am a genius who just wrote this for you. I should ask for feedback. I should ask for what's going on in your life. Is there anything going on in your Wednesday, Tuesday, blah, 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 where it might interfere here? That way it really shows them, number one, this is for them. And this is not the end all be all, right? They have their say as well. So that's great. So, but to close, if you had your own hybrid year, and I think you kind of do, because I know you want to do a half marathon this year, or a marathon, or clarify for me, what would be your hybrid goals for 2025?
Well, okay, firstly, I think is important. I want to share like where I'm at with training.
Yep.
Because listening to you and your goals was like, making me think about mine. I think for me, what keeps me coming back to CrossFit and why I love it is exactly what you said. Like, I love the variety. And I love being able to challenge my body in like quite extreme ways. Like, I still look at like a squat snatch as like this really cool coordination of so many muscle groups, joints, requires mobility, requires strength. Yeah. And I love the fact that I can still do that. And I want to be able to squat snatch for as long as I possibly can.
100%.
Doing things like muscle ups, handstand walking, whilst those things don't make up the majority of my training, I love being able to like refine skills. And I know that if I just did squat, bench, dead, yeah, making strength progressions is fun, but not having the skill element and the constant like learning, improving not just by doing more volume and intensity. Because that's not what I want to do. It's a very hard path to follow for a long period of time, because it comes down to a matter of running harder or just putting more weight in the bar.
To the extent that I really respect people's ability to do that, if that's what they do.
Sure.
It's crazy.
And whereas for me, I can improve at CrossFit just by improving efficiency in a skill. I guess you could argue the same for bench pressing, deadlifting, squatting, but it comes to a point where you can't really refine it anymore,
It's just you're weak.
Yeah, exactly. So I just love that aspect of CrossFit. I love the varied aspect for being someone who's followed strict progression for so much in my life. I'm now in a period in my life where I like to just come to the gym sometimes and just look at what's written in the program and just kind of just do it.
Yeah.
But I can't do it all the time.
Yeah.
Like I do also know that, you and I, we both competed at the end of 2024 in a CrossFit comp. I'm in mid-Jan right now, about 2 months post-comp, and I'm still not fully back. My body's still not ready to be doing heavy squats and heavy Olympic lifting. So like, I'm kind of going through a bit of a hybrid phase now.
Dude, you PR'd your big 3 the other day, though.
But then after that,
okay. So it comes at a cost.
Yeah, it comes at a cost, and probably I shouldn't have gone that heavy, like, because I could feel there was already, my body was like, my knee was just a little sore.
Does this mean that your definition of a hybrid athlete is to be able to perform these things with minimal cost to your
That's
longevity?
Just important to me.
Yeah.
That's important to me, because for me, longevity is more important than, how high I place in a
But I think that
competition.
is an important consideration about the idea of the hybrid athlete, is it really can be just a very individual definition.
For sure. Yeah, it's very individual. Yeah. So for me, when I look at my year, I kind of go in and out of periods of like a lot of CrossFit bias. Basically, like 2 months before the CrossFit comp, I was doing a lot of CrossFit.
Yeah.
But then if we look at the 6 months before that, I wasn't doing that much CrossFit.
Right.
I'd maybe do some kip and pull-ups once every 3 weeks. I'd maybe jump on the rings and do some muscle-ups once every month. I'd maybe walk in my hands once every 5 months. But when I look at what my training was always consisting of, was like hinging patterns, squatting patterns, single leg patterns, pushing and pulling in, heavy loads, but also like light loads. And that's really what my training looks like the majority of the year.
Yeah.
And then, I got into running in 2024, made sure I had running in my program every single week.
Right.
I really enjoy that. I love playing other sports. So my focus in the year really changes. And I'm going through a period right now. I mean, I know I have the Open coming up in a month and a half, but I'm not doing CrossFit style training right now.
Yeah. So to get to...
So what is my ultimate? Like, I think for me personally, I think like I love having Olympic lifting targets.
Okay.
So I feel like I would love to be able to, because I like the more technical aspect of, rather than just, back squat 180 kg. And I'm like, I just don't know if I want to put my body under that amount of load, So I think I'd have a goal like snatch 100 kilograms, or, like clean and jerk at 125 and run a half marathon. I actually would love, I think in not this year, but next year, I'll probably do a half Ironman, because I like the variety of the discipline. Yeah. The fact there's swimming and biking. I just don't think Hong Kong is a great place for me to be. It's not very accessible to be prepping for a half Ironman. That's what I'm doing it right now. Yeah. So yeah, I would love like a multidiscipline endurance event, like a triathlon, or a half Ironman. And then, yeah, I like the idea of like some strength goals of like, 100 kg snatch, maybe some squatting and deadlift goals. Yeah. Maybe an upper body test as well. I like the idea of 100 unbroken. Was it 100 unbroken push-ups, that guy? Yeah. Just 100. Wow. Yeah. Something like that. Okay. So I don't really have one, but I didn't think about it.
Yeah. I mean, it's again.
But what I will say is, when I go through these hybrid phases, where I'm basically moving away from CrossFit, I just always want to make sure I'm maintaining a decent level of strength, right? So that means like, I don't want to be dropping down, I don't want to be losing more than 10-15% of my top end strength. But given that I've been doing this for so long now, I seem to hold on to top end strength quite well. Okay. Like I went last year, I didn't squat for like 5 months because of my knee. And I came back in, and within a month, I felt like I was back at my old numbers again already. So yeah, I just want to make sure I'm maintaining enough strength. I like, just honestly, Chris, I just love maintaining all qualities of fitness.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're in the sense of the bandwagon. You're not on it.
Nah. But I I know as an aging athlete,
Yeah.
like maintaining top levels of strength
Yeah.
and, elasticity, like plyometrics and jumping, like that's something that goes very fast with aging people.
Yeah.
And I know that in order to maintain that, I have to be doing
Right.
plyometrics. I need to be doing Olympic lifting. I need to be jumping on boxes. I need to be sprinting.
Yeah.
I know that those stuff go. And then because I'm a naturally a bit of a slow twitch athlete, I know that it's even more important for me to maintain that stuff in my program. But I want to be strong and I want to be enduring. I really like the idea of just having all facets of fitness available to me.
But if I were going to push you into it, you are doing like a half marathon this year, right?
Yeah.
So that's at least that.
That's that. Yeah.
All right. So we have our goals. But number one, this was a pretty awesome conversation about this whole idea of the hybrid athlete. I know it's such a hot topic right now and it's so hard to define. Although there are similarities that people would probably mention in the discussion of it. But just the programming aspect, it does take a lot of things to balance, but it is attainable if you go through these specific steps and have these conversations, right?
Yes.
Right on. Well, I appreciate essentially the free coaching session.
So can I ask you, do you think you will actually go ahead and pursue this goal of a back squat and a marathon in a year?
I mean, I kind of just had it. My brother did a marathon last year to commemorate my dad, and I thought that was awesome. Yeah. And now I'm like, oh, that I've never wanted to do a marathon actually, but I don't know why I don't. Like, so I if I'm gonna run twice a week anyway, again, goals help drive me towards these habits. Yeah. So fuck it, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Nice, Chris.
Right on.
Before we say goodbye, here's one crazy statistic for you. Did you know that almost 40% of people who listen to the show don't actually subscribe to it? Now, I didn't think that was a big deal until I actually learned about the power of hitting subscribe. For you, the listener, you get to stay up to date when we drop episodes on a weekly basis. But for us as a podcast, it really helps our visibility and helps us attract great brands and great listeners to help grow this podcast. So if you enjoyed this episode or you're a big fan of the show, please do us a massive favor and hit subscribe. Thank you so much.